we have to be okay with a level of conflict as a sales professional if you're going to be successful.
It's believing that everything that's happening is happening for you and not to you.
And what was the incentive for the student to do this?
There wasn't an incentive.
People are kind of programmed to kind of follow orders.
I present to you lemon in a fish tank.
I do think sometimes humor is a great way to de-escalate stuff.
I don't know how to teach it to you except for I hope suffering happens to you.
This is a huge debate.
Well, tell me tell me what's the debate?
Hi,
welcome to the Jason Forrest Show. I'm with my wife, Mary Forrest, and today we're talking about the advice that Tony Robbins gave Patrick Bet-David on how to overcome depression. And of course, we're going to talk about how that applies to salespeople to find their purpose and become the best version of them. All right, let's go. All right, Mary, I remember you saying recently there was this book you were reading, and it talked about these different like life stages of a man, and it was like the prince, the pauper, the king, the queen, something like that, all different kind of life stages. But based upon the different stages, was also maybe kind of connected to their happiness. And I recently just saw this video from Patrick Bet-David where he was interviewing Tony Robbins, and he talked about something similar. And so I want to show this video to you and see what your comments are on it.
That period of time, by the way, 22 to 42, if people are in that stage of life right now, it's statistically the most unhappy period because people are trying. They thought it was going to be easy. It's not so easy. They eventually learn, usually in their 30s. Yeah. And then what they learned is, well, not as easy as I thought. I'm not as invincible as I thought. And they have to figure things out. And they're trying to prove themselves to themselves and others. They haven't figured it all out yet. Now, some people do these seasons earlier, some later, but it's a good range.
So 22 to 42 is what Tony Robbins was telling Patrick Bet-David is where people are maybe not as happy as they need to be. And that seems very similar to some of the stuff that you were talking about with me earlier. So what are your opinions of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. That's a huge age range there.
Huge age range. Yeah.
Through the map of the, Alison Armstrong's work that I've been looking at, she would call that, and you got a couple of the names right of the different ones, but she would call that your areas where a lot of it is in the Prince stage, which is when you're growing something, you're building out what you're going to be, you're building out your character, who you're going to be, and the business that you're going to be in, and that's just tough. That's just really, really tough work. And she says her age range is a little bit different. She says about 45-ish. Again, it's periods. It's not like it's an age thing exactly, but 45-ish is where you kind of breathe and go, oh, like I've done it. Like I did the work. I know who I am now. I've built what I want to build. Not that you're complete, not that the building's over, but that fear of, am I going to make it? Am I going to get there? Am I going to be a total failure? Kind of goes away by that age. But as a man, how does that resonate with you?
Well, I definitely think that when I was in my 20s, I was 100% trying to find out who I was and trying to understand, what I was interested in, what I liked the most, what I was passionate about, where I could make the most money. I mean, I was definitely doing a lot of kind of searching during that time period, and I probably really didn't really kind of own myself, or maybe start owning myself until I was 25, and then probably around that 30-ish range, I probably started to kind of own myself. And so that's probably very similar to
Yeah. Did you find at the 42 to 45-ish range, you felt like you could breathe a little bit more?
Yeah, 100%. I'm at 46 today. So yeah, I definitely would say that things, you kind of just, I don't know what's the word, you kind of surrender to what's happening. Like you've seen enough by then that whatever economy that changes every 7 years, the coronavirus or the .com or, whatever kind of thing that happens, you have enough experience with those things that you're like, all right, well, this is just kind of part of the experience and part of what happens. And so, let's just, kind of go with it and adapt, and, things will change, and there's seasons of life, and so we have to just kind of adapt with the seasons.
Yeah. And it'll move on, it'll pass, and we'll get through that. It's making me think that you're going in seasons of business. I'm thinking about jeans right now with the baggy jean look. This too shall pass.
Yeah, I hate that look.
I know you do. You're very charged about it.
I'm very charged.
Very charged about it. But I do think, and to me though, also the hardest time would be those early 20s, and it's easier. until you're in your 40s and it drops off. So the whole time, I wouldn't say, to me, in my experience, it's a fixed thing there, that it's 22 is tough and it just gets a little bit easier every single year. But there's a lot then too, right? When you are looking on, you were successful probably in one area or unsuccessful in one area, which is schooling's, until about that age. And now you've got this big achievement of some sort of graduation, probably, whether that's high school or college, does not matter, but you have an achievement, a completion, and now you start all over, and you're starting back at the very beginning, and going into the workforce, and then trying to figure that out. And I remember, like, a lot of times, earlier on, or even in my 30s, looking around, and that, like, how did I get here? Do I belong here? Is this where I should be? And I'll say now, I'm 42 now. So right at that magical age that Tony Robbins is talking about, but I don't have those thoughts anymore. I don't have those feelings anymore. What are some of the thoughts and feelings that you had in your 20s and 30s that you just don't worry? Some worries that you had or thoughts that you have that you don't have anymore? Yeah,
I mean, I think definitely if I am I good enough? Are people, do I have value in the world? Am I adding value? Are people going to think that, like, this is a genuine? This is like I'm genuine, like I really am, gonna do the things that I'm gonna say I'm gonna do, and can people trust me? Do I fit in? Do I belong? I mean, those are all definite things that that I worried about in the 20s. So I'm curious, what would be some advice that you would give a salesperson today, an entrepreneur, a leader, in order who's that's potentially going through this phase, and that kind of 22 to 42-year-old phase, because it doesn't have to take that long. You don't have to just wait till you're 42 to figure it out, right? So you could there's probably some hacks that you can take to kind of, or cheat codes to go faster.
Probably, but the first thing that comes up for me is not about a hack. It's the meaning that we're giving it. I think when I was in that stage, I didn't realize everyone else was having the same thoughts and the same feelings. So you give a lot of meaning to that and if you're not exactly certain about your career path, you're not sure if you're in the right place. And that cost me a lot of, angst. I turned down a pretty prestigious job. My senior year of college, I was offered a job. I turned it down. But just the turning it down was so, I mean, it really kind of wrecked me, because this duality of, like, what am I going to do with my life and who am I going to be? And the job was, I was offered to be a junior publicist working right under a lady in LA. She was the publicist for Mel Gibson huge. I met her because she was I met her working on a movie with John Travolta, and she was John Travolta's publicist. And so she offered me a job to come move to LA and work with her. She said her business is blowing up, and she was, name dropping everybody, these, A-list celebrities that she works with. And she offered me to come work with her. And I just thought, there's a side of me that thought, this is what I've worked my whole life for, is to get this opportunity. There's a part of me that thought, God, it'll be so cool to tell people what I do. Like, this is so impressive for people to know. Like, people will know that I'm something then. But there was a part of me that thought, I just can't spend my life being a publicist for movie stars. Like, God put me on the earth for something else. And it is not to make a movie star a bigger movie star. Like, that just cannot be my career path. But I battled, because I know a lot of people paid a lot of money for my education. I have a degree in public relations and journalism, public relations, advertising. And it was for this moment. And then when I get to that, I turn it down. So then I went on this whole thing of feeling just completely terrible about myself, and, like, who am I going to be now? And this soul searching and this whole path of figuring it out, especially after turning down something that was so major. But it's just part of the process. And I think what's really interesting is we all get to where we're supposed to be, and we think that these decisions that we make are so pivotal for the rest of our lives, that if I don't take this job in LA to be a publicist, it's like despair that's going to happen. And it's not. You are going to end up being who you were supposed to end up being. And there's a lot of paths to get there. And so you don't have to worry about it. There are, there's course corrections the whole way. And so you don't get a job that you think that you really want. And you have the opposite. You really want this job and you don't get the job. Okay. Like there is another direction there of how you're going to go. Maybe you get somewhere and you don't get the promotion, or you lose a job, or you're laid off, or you end up in a different industry. All of it leads to where you're supposed to be. I ended up not doing that, and I went back to bartending. And I remember very few people. I didn't tell many people about the job offer, only my closest friends and family, because I couldn't listen to the ridicule or like, what are you doing moments. And with bartending, so many, I know my parents were super disappointed at that moment. And I remember seeing other people coming in that were in school with me too, coming in and going and almost looking like, what happened? Like, what went wrong? Like there's so much in you. Like, what happened that you ended up here? But when I look back on that time, you know what that behind that bar was? It was a stage. I told stories. I learned jokes. I learned how to manage people. If you can manage drunk people, you can manage salespeople. The stories, I practiced the storytelling. That my background in storytelling started at that bar. I think I am so good and at keynotes today. And offered the ridiculous fees that I have for a keynote. It started in that bar. I learned how to read profit margins and how to do inventory and how to run a business because I went to the owner of the bar. And I would, count up my tips at night. I'd clean the bar. I cleaned the bathrooms. It was very humbling. I cleaned the floor, mopped the floors, cleaned the ashtrays every single night, cleaned urinals. I did all of this. And I would do that every night. And I would talk to the owner of the bar and I would, tell him, here's how much I made in tips. But I said, but did the bar make money? What do I need to ring for you to make money? Like, how are we profitable? How do you do inventory? And he was like, do you really want to learn all of this? I said, I do. And so he would stay after and show me how to read the books and how to make the books and how to order. And he taught me all of these things on business that became the foundation for everything later. So what looked like this huge failure, right? And this bar was not sexy. Okay. This bar is not sexy. It is awesome. It's awesome. University pub. It is still there. It is now run by the daughter of the owner that I worked for. In fact, her first night bartending was with me. We worked together. But what happened is in one light, it looked like I had failed. I had this huge job offer. I went this other direction that looked like it was nothing. But what I learned from that was huge. So there are no mistakes. You can't mess it all up. If your heart is going and you're in the right place, would it have been a failure for me to go be a publicist? No, I would have learned tremendous things. I think I would have ended up back here, who I am and what I'm supposed to be. So it's just not as big of a deal as we think it is.
Yeah. So it's believing that everything that's happening is happening for you and not to you. And that this is exactly how life is supposed to be for you. And just maybe, everything that happened up to this moment is what was supposed to happen so that it created really who you are today.
Yeah.
And if people can have that really quantum shift, I mean, that's a huge shift in their mindset that all of these things, all these mistakes that I made or I thought I made, or these life experiences that I felt like I was kind of a victim or took me down a path that I'm not really happy with, that they could just add some gratitude to that and say, well, maybe, because of these moments is because of these moments, I learned this and I learned that, and I learned this, I learned resilience. I learned I was put in the right situation, like in your case, to learn how to be an entrepreneur and to learn how to think like a business owner. And it's because of those moments is where I am today.
Absolutely. And I know you have these because you talk about, if you hadn't gotten fired, you wouldn't be, right here, or it wouldn't have happened that fast. I know too, even for people younger, I would look back. I like what you're saying about the victim thing. I was very, very bullied in middle school, physically, emotionally, like mean notes. There was no text message or social media because that didn't exist, but there were some really mean notes written. I was physically beat up in middle school. It was a very difficult time for me. And I can look at that as a victim space, but guess what? That's one of the best things that happened because it made me stop and go, I wonder what other schools are out there. I wonder what else I could go do, which had me work my hiney tail off to get into a boarding school in the Northeast, and got it in there. And all of a sudden, like, these people exist. Like, this is totally different. They use seasons as verbs. They summer places and winter. I didn't know about this kind of stuff, and opened up a whole new space. But my mind shift wouldn't have happened had I not had such a horrible experience in middle school, to make me look for an alternative. So all of them, you just can't mess it up. You know, you're on the right path. You can't mess it up unless, you just keep going. It's all working out for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, that's that mindset shift of going from that victim to I'm now the hero of my own story. But at the same time, I don't want to what's the right word? Lessen how difficult sometimes it is to overcome, our surroundings and our programming. Sometimes we become, we feel like we are a part of that. And there's a great story, a great situation called the Milgram experiment. And I'm going to show you this video here in a second, but it's a really, really famous study about how this one scientist wanted to figure out if he could make people shock other people, and just through kind of like that social pressure, that kind of peer pressure, if people would kind of follow along. And he was very surprised with what happened. But check out what happens.
So before this experiment took place, these psychiatrists got together and they said, how many people are going to go through with this? Who's going to go all the way and kill somebody? And they thought 0.8%. You have to be a psychopath. You have to want to hurt people. And in reality, 67% of people went all the way. So Stanley Milgram's trying to find out, do people just respond to orders? Like the Nuremberg trials were going on, and these Nazis were saying we were just following orders. So 250 volts is enough to kill you, right? And 100% of people went up to 250 volts. So there's a lot going on there, but none of it, the guy in the lab coat didn't have some secret hypnosis trick.
And what was the incentive for the student to do this, to continue doing this?
There wasn't an incentive. It was obedience to authority.
So that's pretty interesting, right? Because it's an interesting social experiment that 100% of people took up the perceived electric shock. They thought it didn't actually really happen, but they thought it was happening. 100% of the people took it up to a level that would kill someone through electric shock because of exactly what he said. What he learned was that you've got people are kind of programmed to kind of follow orders, and they have to kind of choose to resist, and choose to resist that, that peer pressure. And so the reason why I think it's an interesting study is because there's several things that I want to go with this. So number one is if you're an individual salesperson, you have to know that, and you're trying to be a warrior, you're trying to be a top 10% salesperson. Well, the odds that you are going to be surrounded by other winners like you is obviously very low. Probably 90% of them are not going to be like you, and you're going to have a lot of resistance. And so just know that you're going to have to choose to not be obedient. That technically to be mediocre, to complain about the economy and the reasons why people aren't buying, and the product's not good and the price is too high, and all those things that the general population of your peers and your same company are saying, that it's way more natural to just kind of be obedient and just kind of go with the masses and agree that that's the case, versus it's not natural. It actually requires you to really decide in that case to go against what people are saying, is the reason why we're failing. And that takes a lot of courage.
A ton of courage. And it's programmed and wired into us, to be collective. In the past, it would have been dangerous to go against everybody because we needed other people. We still do, but we don't, not the same way that we did before. So it's understandable, but it's sad. But I wonder too if it's just listening to authority. I think that's part of it, but I think there's also, people are incredibly conflict avoidant. People will do anything to not get into conflict for the most part. There are exceptions to this, of course, but most people will just do not want conflict. And we have to be okay with a level of conflict as a sales professional if you're going to be successful. You have to, I've watched shop videos where a prospect brings up an objection and the salesperson just kind of acts like they didn't say it. It's just like, and we've got to go towards that. We have to talk about the objections they have. We have to extract the objections they have. We have to find the conflict and work through it. And that is we're not programmed naturally. Most people aren't programmed naturally to do that. So it's a skill set.
Well, let's talk about that. So let's talk about some ways that a salesperson could again up-level their mindset, their process, their language in order to stand up for themselves. The first thing that comes to mind is just a good kind of reframe for themselves, and that's without conflict there is no change. And so conflict actually is a good thing. Conflict is like the stepping stone into something better. So we can't see conflict as happening to us. We need to see conflict as happening for us, and it's because of the conflict it now gives us an opportunity to change and to do something different or to take a stand for something. But what do you think? Tell me something that you think a salesperson can say to you or think about to improve their ability to handle conflict.
Well, I think the first thing is you have to make the conscious decision. Do you want, what is stronger, your values and what you think is right to do, or being part of the group? And most of the time, you said this a little bit earlier about being a top sales professional. If you are a top person, you are not doing what everybody else does, and they will talk about you. They will not be on board with you. They will not. I know very few top performers that are great friends with a lot of people on the team. They're not. They are so different, and they do things. And every time they are winning, every time they're doing these hard things, it shines a light on what those other people aren't doing and aren't willing to do, and they don't like it. They don't like you. So you have to decide: are you okay being unliked? Are you okay being alone? What's more important to you? Doing what you believe is right, or being part of the group? And if you don't consciously make the decision, you'll be part of the group. That's what will happen in the moment. If it's not made ahead of time, most of the time in the moment, it's too hard to make that decision and change and go against the grain, go against the group of people. So it has to happen ahead of time.
I love it. Okay, so one thing would be obviously like just figure out what are your values. Figure out, and really, which makes a lot of sense because obviously if a person usually doesn't go against their values. Usually that's the case, right? Especially that's one of the things that we know from NLP from a behavioral change perspective is if a person is struggling with doing something that we need them to do that would be very successful for them and very helpful for them, is to actually show them that the thing that they're struggling with is actually against the value that they care about so much, right? So, for example, if someone, let's say truth is a very high value for them, and speaking, being honest with people is a very high value, and integrity is a very high value, but all of a sudden the salesperson keeps yielding. They keep yielding the authority over to the customer, and they let the customer really control the process. Then what we would do in that situation is put them in what's called a cognitive dissonance, or like a bind. And that's, well, right now, are you going to start speaking your truth, which means you're going to uphold your value of integrity and you're going to start telling people what's best for them to do? Or are you going to change your value of integrity and truth and continue to yield to the customer and allow the customer to take advantage of you?
Yeah, and we do not go against our values.
We do not.
But it's not, we will muddle that in our brain. So it's as a leader, something great to do is to pull it apart and show the two different actions and belief systems around them is a great gift that we can give somebody.
Mm-hmm. Good. So one last thing I'm thinking about, I'm curious what your thoughts on this too, for a person to, again, fight this Milgram experiment, right? When it comes to, being different than the norm. And we saw this a lot, with, anything when it comes to the coronavirus or any kind of thing, I even think in the book, Reality Transurfing, which is a phenomenal book that we and I both really adore. But he talks about this idea of the pendulum, that there's these kind of pendulums that people are in, and you kind of get stuck really in this pendulum, which obviously we saw again with, anything that people kind of get carried away in. But so one, we talk about the whole idea of values and being able to overcome conflict, but I also think it's important to, as fast as possible, try to find even just one person that thinks the way that you think. So for example, like if again you are that top 1% salesperson, you are trying to break the norm and you are trying to be different, then who is someone that is kind of on the fence like you? Maybe they're not exactly like you, but who's someone that's on the fence, and you can go to that person and you can basically befriend that person and you can mentor that person and get that person kind of over on your side. So at least now, if you're a sales team of 50 people and you're the one person that's the outlier that's really doing things no one else is doing, well, now you got a buddy. Now you got a second person. And then of course the two of you guys can kind of rally together and go find a third person that's on the fence. But that would be the way, in my opinion, that a person could kind of rise up and create kind of a success coup, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. Or find them outside of, if you don't have somebody, I mean, some people are in very small sales teams or the other ways is it's okay to have this in books from people or podcasts with people or other groups or people outside of your company. So that would work that way as well too.
Or we like, and that makes me think of what we have a public class. So we do private sales training and private leadership training. We do also public sales leadership training and public sales training, right? And one of the benefits that we find a lot of time is that by putting them in a public class, those outliers, those top 1% sales warriors, well, they now get to go build a tribe with other top 1% sales warriors from other companies, and it actually skyrockets their performance because they have more people that are thinking like they're thinking, and they didn't have that in their own little private company.
Yeah, and you're just not alone anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're just not alone.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, so speaking of salespeople and sales skills, one of my favorite things to do to up-level my performance is to find thought leaders that are outside of specific like sales training. So meaning like, is it great to study, other sales trainers are out there like Zig Ziglar. Of course, it's great to do that. And Jeffrey Gitomer, those are great people. But at the same time, I don't want to just kind of keep rehashing the same ideas over and over again. And my concern is if I only study them and you only study them, then we're going to kind of get the same ideas backward. And we're just going to kind of all say the same thing. And so, paradigm shift from the outside. So it's great to really be an innovator and think from the outside. So one of my favorite people to pay attention to is a former FBI interrogator. His name is Chris Voss. And Chris Voss is, he's got a phenomenal book called Never Split the Difference. And I really, really, really love his work. You could definitely tell that he studies NLP as well. He has a lot of NLP principles. I mean, pretty much everything he does is probably NLP from some form or fashion. But here's a great example, a great thing that he talks about on how he negotiates price that I feel is a pretty powerful technique.
We don't negotiate over price, but I don't say that. If you want to know what my price is, I go, it's a lot. It's really expensive, more than you've ever paid. And then you choose whether or not you want to go on. You're going to imagine a horrible price. And you won't allow me to go on until you've contemplated the price and at least said to yourself, all right, so if what I get for this price, it'll be worth it. Now you're actually curious about the package. So now we're no longer talking about price. We're talking about what you get for the price.
So this technique is really interesting when he talks about, look, it's going to be really expensive. And what it does, it evokes a tremendous amount of curiosity in a person. So to me, it does a couple of things, right? Number one, it evokes a tremendous amount of curiosity of, oh, well, what is the price? What is that? Or it is, what does expensive even mean, right? So one, I think it evokes a tremendous amount of curiosity. Number two, it also plays with, of course, the ego of a person, because a person doesn't want to ever feel like they're not enough and they can't afford something, which I think is amazing. And then the third thing it does, which I really like, and this is a great price conditioning, price anchoring strategy that you and I teach as well, is that as soon as you kind of mention the word expensive, well, a person in their mind, humans are very map making type people, so we're all trying to figure out, okay, well, what is expensive for him, and what does that mean to me? And it's really interesting because people have different kind of paradigms for expensive, and it's very possible that as soon as you say it's expensive, let's say for example, you're charging something that's $100,000, and in their mind, they immediately come up with a number that's like $150,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, and so all of a sudden, when you actually give them the price, they're like, oh, well, that's a lot less than I thought it was going to be, and like completely messes with them and disrupts the pattern. But But yeah, what did you take from that video?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that. I love that. Chris Voss, great job. That's a great. I love that idea. And it's similar, to what I do. And if I know if they already have, if I say, hey, have you gotten any contracts? You have any proposals from anybody else? If they say yes, I go double, triple it. That's about where I'm going to land. And just, again, I don't know what they have from anybody else. I'm just want them to go really, really big for the same reason. But that's happened to me. I don't know if you remember this a couple of years ago. It was a girl. She's an author, and she called me. She was doing that small group. This is years ago, maybe like 10 years ago. She was doing a small group, and she was able to invite people to go to. It was at Marianne Williamson's house. It was like 8 women that were invited. She's like, it's really expensive. I gotta tell you, it's really expensive if you want to do this. And in my mind, I was going to the hundreds of thousands, and I'm like, all right, we'll figure this out. I'll talk. I got to get all my skills out. I'll ask Jason for this. And at the end, it was less than $10,000. Which I don't remember what it was, but it was like a fraction of what I thought. And I was like, laughed, like, okay, like, got it, right? So I don't know if she knew what she was doing with that technique, but I was like, it's like a no-brainer, because I've gone to I've been justifying in my head these much higher numbers. But I do that for people too. I think it is helpful, especially the places I think it's important to do it is if you are in a market where people don't know what you cost. So if you're going to buy, a car, and the prices of cars are everywhere, they're advertised what they are. People pretty much know a range, or pretty close range of a specific car before they go in. When people call for sales training, this is not something that people have in their mind at all with sales training. They have no clue what it is. It's such a huge range. And I think if you have a service or a product that people may have not purchased before, it's not an everyday item that they don't have one, it's also great. It's a great technique in those spaces as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. So what else would you recommend that a salesperson, let's give some more examples of where a salesperson can use this technique.
Well, to me, it's a good, when I was using it, we have some pricing that's, on the internet and things. Now you can go see pricing of certain things that we do, not everything that we do, but some of the things, because we don't advertise everything that we do. But when everything that we were doing was custom, every proposal, everything was custom to that company. How many people were in that company? What did they need? What were their goals? Everything is custom. So for anybody that's doing custom pricing for people, so you have a custom product you're creating, it is not standard pricing. This is a great way, because it's frustrating for people. They want to know a price and they want to know a range of what it could be. And they don't, but you can't give them a number because you don't have it. So we're in this weird place of like, what do I say? Because I really don't know. I think this is a good technique to use in those. So one, if people don't know, have any clue what your pricing is, if you don't know how it's going to be priced for them. So when I was selling for us in those places, our custom processes, I would say, look, if you've talked to whatever you think that this is going to cost, it is going to be way, way more than that. So I just want to let you know right now, I'm not going to try to bamboozle you. This is very expensive. However, there's some questions I need to ask you to know exactly what it's going to be. So I would love to get you that price today. So let's move forward. Let me ask you some questions. Is that okay? But right now, I don't want to. If you're looking for a deal, I'm not going to be it. And just kind of leave it at that. So now they're saying, yes, I'm ready to move forward with answering more questions. Because that's usually where this is coming up. It's where somebody's asking for pricing really early in the process, and you're not either ready or you don't know at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a technique that I like to use, similar, same thing that you're doing, is I like to ask the customer, of course, the question of, what did you pay before for something like this? And then what did you expect? What did you expect that we were going to charge, right? So what did you pay before? So let's say we're selling our sales recruiting services and we're charging $25,000 for a sales recruit. And so the first question I like to ask is, what did you pay in the past? And they'll say, well, I paid $10,000. And I go, great. So that obviously that didn't work for you, because, you would have gone back to that person if it was, if you got what you were looking for. So it sounds like it's going to cost more than $10,000 compared to what you paid in the past, since $10,000 didn't get you what you're looking for. Is that correct? And of course they're like, yeah, I guess so. And so they don't like that, by the way, because they like it. They don't like that I called them out on it, right?
Oh, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great technique.
Yeah. So then I go, great. So we know it's going to cost more than 10 grand because that's the only way to solve your problem is you're going to have to pay more than 10 grand to solve that problem. So I'm curious, what did you expect that our service, something that we would, that we're going to do is we're going to do recruiting. We're going to find the person. We're going to assess them. We're going to onboard them for you. We're going to train them for you for the first 90 days. We're going to guarantee them. We're going to do all these things other people aren't doing and that you're not getting currently. And so again, what did you expect something like that would cost, right? And it's interesting because, they're never going to say the number that you want it to be, right? So let's say a customer comes back and says, I don't know, maybe like 17, 18,000. And I would say, got it. Well, it's way more than that. It's going to be 25,000 is what it's actually going to be. And so I said, so then I'll reframe it and I'll say, so let me ask you, suppose I'm able to get you the salesperson you're looking for, completely onboarded, completely trained. And again, I put that guarantee on it. And that salesperson's able to sell equal to your top 20% within month 6, which the people you've hired in the past aren't doing that. And they're definitely not even making it for you. You know how to turn them over. Then, would it be worth paying, $8,000 more than you thought it was going to be?
It's great.
Right. And then, so now what they're doing is I'm putting a gap, right? So we've got the gap of what they thought it was going to be compared to what they paid, and then I'm just closing them on that gap. Like, would it be worth it to you? And it's funny because normally when you ask that question, they usually will give you some sort of like kind of funny response, So like, for example, I'll ask that question and a leader, I've literally had the funniest responses. I've had an owner one time said, if you're going to charge me $25,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 for a salesperson, they better shit golden eggs. Like, they literally said that on the phone, on a prospect call.
No
right?
one, they don't say that when I'm talking.
Yeah, they said it to me. Yeah. And so of course I just reframe it back to him and I go, all right, well, so you're saying if I can prove to you that this person could do that, could take shit golden eggs, then you'd be willing to pay, over double what you paid in the past and $8,000 more than you expected to pay. And they're like, I guess so. I go, great, no problem. So, we've been 10 minutes into this call. And so I just need another 45 minutes of your time to share with you why people like you pay twice as much than they do from other people and pay, usually 30, 40% more than they thought it was going to be. And then at the end of the conversation, I'll just ask you, do you see the value of paying twice as much as you did before, or over twice as much as you did before, and about $8,000 more than you expected to pay? And if you do, you should do it. If you don't, then you shouldn't do it. Sound fair? And they go, great, sounds fair. And I just literally give them the pitch, and I just keep going back to, here's another reason why we're charging, $15,000 more than you paid in the past, $8,000 more than you thought it was going to be. Here's another reason. Here's another reason. Here's another reason. Here's another reason. And then, of course, you just close them at the end. You first started, you thought it was going to be, you paid 10, but it didn't get you what you were looking for. And you thought 25 was too much. It was $8,000 more than you wanted to pay. But how do you feel about it now? And that's basically it.
Phenomenal.
That's the pitch.
I love it. So you have an approach for if you have to customize your pricing, an approach if you have standardized pricing and what the price is. Here's how you can use the technique.
Yeah, that's it. Now, so speaking of sales pitches, one of our shows that we like to raise our children on is Shark Tank, because it's a great show. Highly recommend people watch the show, not just to get great ideas from entrepreneurs, but also to learn negotiation skills, to learn pitching skills, to learn how to handle the rejection from Mr. Wonderful and all the people on stage, right?
Well, and we spoke at the same conference with Mr. Wonderful.
We
and
did.
Got to hang out with him.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. He really is wonderful.
He was so helpful. Remember, we were just starting your show back then, not this show, at Run Towards the Roar show, and he gave us all kinds of tips, and he was so humble and kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
We love Shark Tank.
We do. And so this is actually really funny because this is actually Jimmy Kimmel is pitching on Shark Tank. And so let's see how Jimmy Kimmel does on Shark Tank.
People call fish the meat of the ocean. Sharks, what is the first thing you do when you eat a piece of fish? You squeeze a lemon on it. Yes?
Yes, it's true.
But do you know how dangerous that is? Look at this video we made to demonstrate.
Wow.
Whoa. But what if the fish already had a squirt of lemon inside it? I present to you lemon in a fish tank. It's a lemon in a fish tank. I'm seeking $3 million in exchange for a 7.3% stake. Yes?
Jimmy, how are you getting the lemon into the fish?
Well, the fish eats the lemon through the mouth.
Jimmy, this idea is poo-poo on a stick. You got to take it behind the barn and shoot it.
All right.
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So again, obviously it sounds like that was just a joke that they set up and have Jimmy doing that. It wasn't obviously a real deal. But when I watched this video, I really liked it because again, number one, he disrupted the pattern, which was great. And number two, he added some humor to things. And that's a tricky one, and so I'm curious, there are people right now that, I think humor is great because humor from a psychological perspective, it really ties up the conscious mind. It again, disrupts the pattern, ties up the conscious mind, and really allows you to start implanting suggestions in the subconscious mind. So it's kind of a hypnotic way of really selling. But I think it's difficult to do. And so what advice would you give to sales reps to how to strategically start adding humor into their presentations?
Oh, good gracious. That's loaded.
I know.
Well, one, I think go within your brand. Remember the first program I ever wrote was your X Factor Advantage.
That was a great program.
That was a great program. I like that program. So stay within your brand. If you are a very serious analytical person, you can lighten yourself, but don't try to be Jimmy Kimmel and a comedian. If you're funny and that's like you were the class clown in school and you're the funny one in your group, I feel more comfortable with that person starting to add in humor. So don't jump so far away. I talked on last week's episode about people, saying that my very first seminar saying how unlikable I was. And I jumped so far outside of my personality that it was inauthentic. I didn't enjoy it. They didn't enjoy it. And so I think it's so far of a jump. But if you're wanting to add lightness and some humor, one is don't write humor into everything that you're doing. Have one thing that's humorous. One thing. They didn't come to a comedy show. They came to be sold. So add one thing in and see if it lands and is funny. I mean, the amount of things that sometimes we will write that we think is hilarious and it just bombs terribly. And things that I don't think are hilarious at all, everyone's like dying on. I'm like, I wasn't joking. I wasn't a joke at that point. So one is recognize the feedback that you're getting. And if you're doing something you didn't mean to be funny was funny, but they did it, keep doing that. So let your audience be your guide. And when you're wanting to insert humor, do it just one piece at a time, just one. Like don't rewrite everything. But what I think is really interesting about this clip is I think it's falling into a trap that a lot of salespeople do, which is like pain point. So he's like, he found one pain point, which is the lemon in the eye, which is really funny. He has this one pain point, and now I have this big solution for you, but we don't know what problem the person's having. Jimmy doesn't know his numbers very well. That he's now giving these ridiculous numbers. What was it? 3 million for 7.3%. You have to. There are sales programs out there that just find their pain point and you just harp on that until they yell mercy and buy from you. And that's what I think is happening in this one, instead of a more holistic approach on everything else and asking questions. And there's a lot missing here.
So you're saying, really that goes back to the philosophy that we believe, and that's that human beings are moving away from pain and also towards life improvement. And there are a lot of sales philosophies out there that are really just kind of one-sided. They're either focused too much on the pain or focused too much on the life improvement. And we believe is that human beings are really kind of doing both at the same time. I mean, there's a little bit of them when it comes to any decision. A little bit of them is trying to stop doing something that's problematic, and part of their nature is trying to start doing something that's going to improve them. And obviously, every human being is a little bit of both, depending upon the different percentages of both, right? So 70-30 one way, whatever, 30-70, whatever, right? So you're saying that it's important for us to make sure we do both.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely both, and definitely. It is unlikable to only talk about the pain points and to harp on that. Then people don't want to be around you. Like, why am I being ghosted? Well, because talking about you with you is miserable. And then also understand the return on investment. Whenever anybody's buying anything from you, there's an investment there. What is their return on it? And so Jimmy's giving them these huge numbers, $3 million to put lemons in fish tanks. But what's the return that they're going to get? Why should they do that? And I think a lot of times as salespeople, we get a little bit arrogant on this is, obviously you should do this for this reason. Obviously there's a return. Well, let's tell people what the return is, especially on a business to business sale, which is what he's doing right here is we've got to tell them what their return is going to be.
Yeah. So you're saying, so let's just kind of just role play this. So let's say we were to coach Jimmy right now on his presentation, and Jimmy's in front of us right now. And so we're going to say, hey, Jimmy, great job on again, turning up the pain. Great job on focusing on the problems. But what you could have also added to your pitch is, hey, Sharks, can you imagine you're on this great date with your wife or your husband, and all of a sudden you just know, and you can just feel the guarantee and the freedom that every single bite that you take of a piece of fish is going to already be flavored with lemon. Like how much better will your date night go knowing that you don't have to take any time away from being present with your beautiful wife, and instead you can just enjoy the time with your wife because you enjoy the freshly flavored lemon fish.
So weird.
Is
But
that
exactly.
the idea?
Exactly. If we had an opposing video of them at dinner, or even that awkward, Mr. Bean type man sitting there eating the fish with every bite, just being perfect and not having that. So we see the heaven, right, that people get to move towards would be better. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that. So, it also makes me think though, when it comes to adding humor, I do think sometimes humor is a great way to de-escalate stuff. So what do I mean by that? So that I love using humor when I'm working with like kind of stressed out people. So for example, like TSA agents at the airport, right? and so so we're going up to a TSA agent at the airport. That's a pretty stressful job. Can you only imagine like how chaotic that would be? And of course I give them my ID and I'm like, it's a pretty sexy man right there. And of course they always
every time. I do it every time.
And they see my license and they always laugh, right? And they always kind of, it disrupts the pattern. It makes them kind of smile a little bit, which I think is important. So I think that's a fun thing to do, to kind of be self-deprecating and kind of have fun with it, right? But I also think there's a strategy when it comes to sometimes even like, I don't know, like dealing with conflict and like handling objections and, things like that, right? Be like, I'm just trying to think of like how I would pull this off. So let's say I'm working with a sales rep and they're a little bit, reluctant to like do their homework, And so let's just say do their homework, meaning like we're trying to change behavior here, right? So we're trying to get people to do things that so we're like a trainer. So we want them to watch the video, we want them to do the work and come prepared, And so let's just kind of think this. Again, I'm just kind of off the cuff right now. But if you're a salesperson and I'm trying to get you to do your work, and I go, look, Mary, come on, just do the work. Like just do the work, come prepared. You're going to get more out of the training, right? So that's kind of option one, right? Let's say option two, I just go, girl, Mary, come on, Mary, come on. Just do the homework. You got the homework. You can do this. It's not that big of a deal. Just spend 20 minutes. Just do the homework. I don't know. What do you think? Which approach do you think would actually get you to do the homework?
Yeah, the second one. I mean, it's yeah.
It's kind of, so I think sometimes, a great way to kind of get people through even conflict is to kind of have fun sometimes. To kind of add, how do we add some fun to things? Which I think is huge in selling, right? When customers are struggling with a decision or, they're struggling with going through the money or whatever it is, but, disrupt the pattern and, kind of have fun with it.
I know. I agree. I just, as you're saying all of this, I'm thinking about all of the Office. Well, no, all the Office episodes and Michael Scott trying to like ends up doing something totally awful the whole time he's doing humor. So here would be my how to not be Michael Scott in any of these moments is have a sounding board in your office. In all my leadership classes, I go, especially if you're going to have a tough conversation, you have to have somebody that you can practice with that can be truthful to you and say, you're saying the right things, but your tone is making me feel terrible, making me think you think I'm an idiot. Like, we got to work on your tone. So do you have a partner in your sales office? Do you have your sales coach that you can call, that if you do want to try out some humor, that you run it by somebody, and allow that feedback to come in? Because I think humor is one, I use it all the time. I think it's funny. I mean, for me, on my de-escalating moments is, when I call somebody and they're like real grumpy on the phone. I'm like, I don't know if I'm reading this wrong. It sounds like maybe you don't want to talk to me right now. Is that what's happening? I can call you back. I'm just kind of like light with it. Like, I'm just saying what I'm feeling and hearing, and they usually start laughing. They're like, no, Mary, it's totally fine. Or when I call somebody and I say, hey, hi, my name is Mary. I'm calling from Forrest Performance Group. You don't know me, but I want you to go ahead and feel safe and secure that this is definitely a sales call. And then they start laughing, and I'm like, so do I have, 60 seconds to start proving to you that this is the best sales call of your life? And they're like, yeah, I'll give you 60 seconds. Go for it. And like, so there's things like that now are just kind of regular. They're in escalating or difficult, awkward situations that you can use them. Those are tried and true and work really, really well. But yeah, if you're going to try something new, I just think run it by somebody, get some feedback on it. And if once you land that, and once you have something that works, use it every single time. And once you land it, skyrockets for you.
Yeah. You had a great, I remember one of the techniques you used to disrupt the pattern is on follow-up. And what was that situation, that story where you sent like a picture of like a empty bottle of liquor or something? What was that?
Oh, yes. So that one, I thought you were talking about something different. So this one, it was a whiskey company, and they weren't returning my calls. So I kept sending them emails of myself with a little more of the whiskey gone in the bottle. And then my typing got a little different, little worse the whole time on the follow-up. And they loved it. They got back with me right after all of those silly emails that I sent. But I was being silly with them because I was like, I'm going to keep drinking until you get back with me. And they did. And that was really great. I was thinking about the text messages. What was the guy he was like, sent me some text message and it was like, I'm sorry, I'm not answering. I get so many messages every day. I don't have time for, what do you say? Like, I don't think your services are necessary or something like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Because as a sales professional, I am not supposed to convince the people that already want. I'm supposed to go find the people that are not willing and don't have time and are not ready, willing, and able. And you are perfect for me right now. And he sent me like little laughing emojis. Like, oh my God, Mary, of course you would say that. Okay, I'll talk to you. Like just joking around, just really strong yes-anding whatever they're saying of like, that's you don't want to talk to me? That's perfect. My whole job is to convince people that they need to talk to me. And so if you wanted to talk to me, I wouldn't even have purpose today. Thank God you said that to me. That was perfect. Thank you so much. You're my favorite.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I know I've done similar things in the sense of gone to Upwork and I've hired Santa Claus to.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny.
Santa Claus to pitch, pitch customers, and of course send those videos away, and even just different things like that again kind of lightens the mood and adds some humor. So I agree with you. I think humor is something that's important to do. At the same time, you got to slow roll into your humor, and of course, don't do anything that's offensive. But besides that, self-deprecating humor is probably usually the best way to go.
Yeah.
So
I loved your memoji videos you did too. Those were so.
Oh, I forgot about emoji videos.
Oh my God, they were so funny.
Yeah, some emoji videos, right? So it's taking that Apple emoji thing, and it's like it's like a cartoon version of you. And you're right. I go back to those. I gotta go back to sending those. Those were very effective. Now that you say that,
people loved them.
They did. Maybe we should do an entire podcast of just some emoji.
No,
video.
nobody wants that.
So, okay. So, so we have been trained by a lot of people. We have been trained, by Tony Robbins. We've been trained, by Satyan. We've been trained by a lot of different people, just in person, but also obviously listening to their audios but one person that we've been trained by is Bruce Lipton.
Brucey.
Good old Brucey. And we love Bruce Lipton. He has a phenomenal book called several books, but called The Biology of Belief. I think another one is called The Honeymoon Effect, I think is one. I think that's the seminar we went to. So we went to a small group workshop with just Bruce and his wife, and they were taking us through some pretty interesting concepts. But Bruce, again, what's great about him is he uses science to prove almost kind of mysticism, so to speak. So like the things that we would kind of think are kind of woo-woo and people sometimes aren't really kind of into, he uses biology and uses science to prove this stuff, which is pretty cool. So I love this video where Bruce talks about the importance of manifestation.
You cannot write down right now on a piece of paper, this is what I want, and you can't have it because your mind will get for you what you want, but you have to feed it a vision of what you're looking for. The function of the mind is to make coherence between your belief and your reality. If I believe it's not going to work, then the function of the mind will manifest a situation where it doesn't work. If I totally believe this is how it's going to work, then my mind will set me up in a situation where it works that way. And all of a sudden, that's when you start to realize, wait a minute, it's not chance anymore. This isn't chance. This is creativity. And we are creators.
He's wonderful.
He is wonderful. He is wonderful. So of course, he's talking about a lot of things in this, but the first thing he said, which was so great, is, if you can't even just write down what you want, then how are you going to move towards getting something that you want? And so I'm curious from your perspective, what stops people from just even writing down what they want?
Thinking, Olivia Pope right now. I don't think they take the time to think about what they want.
Olivia Pope from Scandal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember she used to always go, what do you want? And she screw at people.
Yeah,
tell me what you want.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Gosh, she was so good. And so I think from that, I think most people in the show, okay, based on Scandal, people were shocked and it was hard for them to figure out what they wanted. And so I think it's that first step of the time with it. What do you think?
Yeah. So maybe there's just a leash that says if I don't know. Yeah. Maybe there's a procrastination of just trying to figure out what they want. It makes me think of it also makes me think that maybe they're aiming too high. I heard this great quote from Jordan Peterson one time, and he said the mistake that a lot of people make is that they actually set their goals too high, which is like a total disrupt pattern, right? Because you're like, what does that mean? Like, it's crazy. And he says, so for example, like if you have a goal, of, I want to be able to do 100 push-ups, and you go to the gym and you can do 10 push-ups, and you go to the gym again, and you're like, now I can do 11 push-ups, and you're like, 100's too much, and so it's actually becomes kind of like very defeating. And so he said, he goes, a great thing that he does in his psychology practice, he says, I actually need you to lower your goals. I need you to lower your goals. So instead of, if you can only do 10 right now, then I want you to give yourself a goal of 20. And so that seems a lot more achievable for you. And obviously once you achieve that goal of 20, then of course you can go through and you can go, okay, well now let's go for 30, And so I think that, I don't know, that might be one of the reasons why people struggle with putting their goals down, is that maybe it's like, that's the first step of defeat for them. They've got this kind of belief system that, I've done this before, and as soon as I write the goals down, it's like I'm already a loser just by doing this, because I know I'm not going to achieve this, and so it's better to not write them down and not be a loser than write them down and know that I'm going to lose.
Yeah, I've definitely heard people talk about superstitions too, of like, I don't want to, if I say it to the group, then it's like I'm at the superstition with it. But I'm also, as I'm listening to him, I'm thinking about earlier when you were talking about either being the victim of your life or the victor. And I feel like he's talking about that too, because I could tell you two completely factual stories from my life, both factual, one where I'm a total victim and one where I'm the victor. Neither one is factually wrong, but it's the way that you're choosing to look at it. So we're looking at that from the past, but also as we're looking at goals to the future, I think the same way is how we are interpreting the facts and the situations, circumstances that we're in.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with that. So let's just kind of break down the reasons why people wouldn't do this, because I think this is so important. So number one would be, again, maybe they just feel that as soon as they write it down, there's going to be failure. And so again, the way to fix that would be, lower your goals. So lower, which sounds kind of crazy from someone like me who's like, have big goals, but I kind of agree with Jordan Peterson's belief systems, because I know I've been in situations like that before where, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to, I want my waist to go down by 4 inches or something, or 5 inches. And I'm going to the gym and I'm doing the things I need to do. And, I'm 2 weeks in and I've only done like a quarter of an inch on my waist. Well, it'd be a lot better if I was like, I'm going to work until I get 1 inch less, well, then 2 weeks into it, I'm a quarter. I'm like, oh man, I'm 25% to my goal. That's kind of cool. Right. So I think that's one step is to lower your goals. That might prevent you. What else do you think we can come up with that it's causing people to not write down those goals? What else do you think?
I think if we have a belief system of I'm not worthy of this, I'm not enough for this, I don't ever get the things that I want. So again, in looking at the past, right? Because we are predictive of our future based on how we're interpreting our past. So if we're saying things like I never get my goals, or I can never lose weight, and I'm looking at every time in the past, and I'm looking at the part of the diet that was later where I was the same weight as before, using the inches or the dieting example you were using. But what if I looked at the past at the same part of the beginning of every diet, I lost some weight. And that became like the glowing, shining star of my memory. And now we'll pull that forward into the future of if I write this down and come up with it and decide on this diet, I'm pretty quickly going to lose a couple of inches, and we'll just have amnesia on the part where we gained it back, so we can change from that perspective. But I think we've interpreted patterns in our life that may or may not be true, and then we decide that that's what our life will be going forward.
So you're saying, got it. So we're and I think that's an interesting concept here. So you're saying that so often we kind of make up stories of our life, and a lot of times those stories we make up about our life are, again, they're true to us, but they're really...
I don't think anything's made up. I think it's completely factual.
Okay.
It's what part of it is are you highlighting? So if you're looking at a weight loss or a dieting journey, okay, I decide to go on a diet here. For 2 weeks, I lose a quarter of an inch, or I lose 10 pounds. And then I kind of start gaining a little bit back. And then I get back down, and then I go here and then here. And then 6 months later, I'm back at the same weight again. So if I look at it and go, here's day one, here's 6 months later, diet didn't work. Diets don't work for me. Well, then I'm going to keep that pattern of it doesn't work. But if I look at it and go, the first 2 weeks of every diet, I lose 10 pounds. And that 10 pounds, that drop is what I highlight and I'm remembering and repeating over and over again. Because I'm super successful with diets. I lose 10 pounds the first 2 weeks every time I go on a new diet. And that's the story in my head that I'm repeating. I'm now going to be more thoughtful going forward, even though both the losing 10 pounds and 6 months later being at the same weight, they're both facts. But what part am I prioritizing? What part of it am I playing over and over in my head? Same with relationship. We do this with, with your, people with their parents. If you have every single person will have good experiences with their parents and bad experiences with your parents. Which one are you playing over and over again? And then you're saying, okay, I'm about to be a parent. If you're replaying the good ones over and over again, you're like, oh, I'm about to be a great parent. If you're replaying the bad experiences over and over again, you're very nervous. Am I going to be a bad parent like my parent? But it's which ones are you replaying in your head? So it's not making it up. It's just choosing what to repeat.
Got it. Yeah. So it's choosing which part of the story are you going to lock onto?
Yeah. Better words. That was good.
Well, you had great words. So which part of the story are you going to lock onto? And so, yeah, so I think you're right. So, I think we can all, again, we think of like childhood type situations, and, it's, this, like, again, like a time that, you feel like your mom or your dad, really, had kind of a bad experience. Maybe it was during a holiday, or it was during, some sort of experience like that. And you're really locked onto that kind of one moment where maybe the dad yelled at you, or the mom yelled at you. But, the entire time, besides that, there was actually a lot of love and a lot of joy and a lot of excitement. It's just we get imprinted with this kind of one bad part that we pay attention to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So Okay. So I think, so again, we talked about a lot. So when it comes to setting goals and when it comes to manifestation, I think it's important. It's also important to obviously work on your identity, on who's the kind of person that I need to become in order to do that, which I think is important to do, but I also think it's important, something that Bruce says, I think it's super critical everyone pays attention to. And that's, again, our brains are very teleological. They're very goal seeking. And so, what Bruce is also talking about is as soon as you write something down, your brain is going to start kind of figuring out how to put that together, because your brain is a problem solving machine. And so if you write down, here's what I intend to do, not what I'd like to do, not what I want to do, but here's what I intend. I intend to give everyone the ultimate sales experience. And I actually, for the record, I like goals like that better than I do like income goals. Or let me say this: I like goals that are, how would you say this? That I feel like they're 100% in my control versus outcome-based goals. So like the goal of, I intend to give every single customer the best sales experience of their life. Well, I feel like that's very in my control. Versus, I intend to triple my income over the next 12 months. It doesn't seem like it's 100% in my control. But what are your thoughts on that? On setting goals that are more?
Yeah, there's too much pressure on to me on a income level goal. What are the things that will triple your income, and then make that your goal to do that 100% of the time? I'm with you on that.
Yeah. So I think that might be also a problem of why people don't write things down, is because, again, they're writing these kind of like goals that are outside of them, and they need to write goals that are really kind of inside of them, I think is important. Another thing that I think people need to do when they're setting goals is again, focus on who are the people that I need to surround myself with in order to, achieve these goals. And I think a lot of times, I think the sheer act, and I think people know this is not something that I'm, the first time anyone's hearing this, but I do think that's why people don't write their goals down, is because I think just the sheer behavior of writing a goal down, I think there's also like a self-reflection moment that says, gosh, man, if I really commit to this, like I'm gonna have to really like change like my people, I'm gonna change who I hang around with. I'm gonna change a lot of what I do. I don't know if I really want to do that. And I think that kind of stops people quite a bit. Don't you think?
Yeah, but I think that's the first decision that somebody has to make, or not first, but one of the top decisions at the beginning of the process. Otherwise, you're going to sabotage yourself and you're going to think it's about you. But that way, it's your choice. If you say, I am okay making the same I made last year, keeping my habits the same, my people the same, all of that, that's my choice. Great. And you're empowered. You can do whatever you want. But the conflict, the internal conflict, anxiety, stress, depression comes from wanting this other thing outside, triple my income, but not wanting to do the change over here. I'm actually okay if somebody says, I don't want to make any adjustments. I mean, we saw a guy the other day, right? And you're talking about expanding business, and all of a sudden he goes, I don't want to expand my business. I want my business to stay exactly what it is. It's easy for me right now. This is all I want. I don't want to make more money. I don't want to do more work. I don't want to do anything else. All right, more power to you. I thought it was kind of cool that you just can say that. That's great. I mean, I'm okay with that. What I don't like is the stress and anxiety people have from, I want this, but I'm not going to do all the things that it takes to do it, but I'm not going to be honest with myself about this. So my whole life I'm being torn back and forth. That in-between place is what's so uncomfortable.
That's great. So, okay. So speaking of goals, one of my favorite CEOs right now is the CEO of NVIDIA. I'm going to say, I think I said it incorrectly, NVIDIA, but basically they are the company that creates all of the chips right now for basically AI for I believe Tesla, for I think Apple, for Samsung, and so forth. So because of that, their stock price is like skyrocketing. Like I think for me and you, I think we've made like, I don't know, 90% return on that investment of the stock that we're buying.
Go us.
You didn't even know that.
No, I don't
Yeah.
even.
So
I don't know anything.
it's one of our
about
best
this.
stocks. One of our best
That's
stocks.
Wonderful.
So, but again, to me, I like to follow where the money is, and so he obviously is a very successful person, and so I want to follow successful people, and so he has some really great advice on how to achieve your goals.
People with very high expectations have very low resilience. And unfortunately, resilience matters in success. I don't know how to teach it to you except for I hope suffering happens to you. Today, I use the phrase pain and suffering inside our company with great glee. And I mean that. Boy, this is going to cause a lot of pain and suffering. And I mean that in a happy way, because you want to refine the character of your company. You want greatness out of them. And greatness is not intelligence. Greatness comes from character, and character isn't formed out of smart people. It's formed out of people who suffered.
This is a huge debate.
Well, tell me tell me what's the debate?
Is suffering good? Is suffering not good? I mean, people read like every different religious text from two different viewpoints of is suffering good or suffering not good. Well, people interpret the Bible very differently based on which viewpoint they have on it, and it's heated. It's heated religiously. It's heated in business. It's heated between friends. It's heated. I mean, that's a big concept right there. Very cool. I'm so excited for your ideas on it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you said that. I mean, speaking of the Bible, we know that Paul talks about that one of the 4 ways to demonstrate that you are a Christian is that you suffer, as you're able to endure the suffering, endure the growth, endure the change of what's really out there. So, but it's interesting. The reason why I like this quote a lot is because this advice that he gives is that again, without conflict there is no change. There's going to require some sort of change that needs to happen, some sort of suffering that needs to happen in order to get what you're trying to get. I know recently, right now, we rolled out this new goal setting course, for our clients, and one of the questions we write in there in the goal setting course is how much are you willing to suffer, which is an important question. And then of course another thing that we talk about in there is what's your skill gap. Because the delusional thinking that most people have is they'll set some sort of goal. I want to increase my income by 20% or whatever it is. And then of course you ask them, okay, well, what are you going to stop doing that you've been doing? And what are you going to start doing that you haven't been doing in order to give yourself a 20% raise? And they go, oh, I don't know. I just thought I would just kind of throw it out there. Well, the problem is if they're not willing to do something different, then what they're saying is I'm going to do the same thing, and I believe that the economy is going to get better. I believe that the circumstances are going to get easier for me, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to change, but because the circumstances are better, I'm going to make 20% more without me having to do anything. And that is delusional thinking.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that we top grade our marketing department this year. That's the goal. Yeah, it's always somebody else, right? Somewhere else. They could give me better traffic. I'll do the same thing. You give me better leads, I'm set. It's interesting. I mean, and what he's saying I think it's so interesting, right? He's saying suffering leads to character, and that character makes it where you can go through any economy. I mean, that's what you say. You're going to be economy bulletproof. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's what we tell our clients. We want your sales team to be ready for whatever economy. If the economy is great. If it falls apart, you don't feel it because you're ready for it. You're battle tested, but battle tested means you've been in a battle.
Mm-hmm.
And you're choosing to do the hard work. Now, it's interesting too, because there's 2 different times of suffering. There's this suffering and the going through doing the hard things when everything's doing it. The economy's really hard. I mean, the economy shut down in 2020. It was hard for everybody. We were forced into suffering of figuring out a new way to do business, a new way to sell as an entire salesperson industry. But then there's the times where it's really, really good. And you have to choose, am I going to do things that are hard? Am I going to suffer a little bit to keep growing in my skill set to get to the next level? And that's the place where most people are not willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they're not willing to put in the hard work
So I think that's the one thing that really differentiates people is those that will choose to do hard things when you don't have to, when it could be a rest, when you could just ride the wave of success and not worry about it. But when you say, no, I'm going to do it anyway, that changes everything. That puts you at an entirely different caliber of sales professional.
Yeah, I love that. And the last thing I want to say on what he said, because I think it 100% applies to being a great leader as a great communicator in sales too, is by telling people that things are going to be hard, it also starts to desensitize, it desensitizes it. So for example, one of the things that we teach our remodeling salespeople that we work with is, when a customer says, so how long is it going to take for us to, for you to do this remodeling job? And let's say, it's going to take 9 weeks. And the customer's like, 9 weeks. And you're like, I know, it's 9 weeks. It's 9 weeks of having to wait, 9 weeks of suffering, 9 weeks of misery, before you're going to get this dream bathroom and this dream kitchen that you've really imagined. And so, yeah, the question is can you wait, can you wait 9 weeks to get this dream bathroom, and can you handle the suffering of it? And it's an interesting approach because every other competitor that we know of does the opposite. They apologize. I know, I'm sorry it's taking so long. I can't do anything about it. I'm so sorry, right? And that doesn't actually help. But instead, if you could actually desensitize and go, yeah, it's going to take 9, it might even take 10 weeks. Heck, I don't know. It's definitely take some time. But again, great things take time in order to make it happen. And so it's an interesting approach, again, to do that. Okay. All right. We've covered a lot today. We've covered the importance of suffering. We've covered the importance of manifestation. We've covered the importance of using humor in your sales experience, your sales presentations. We've covered what Chris Voss says, and of course, how to get past people that are from the Milgram experiment and so forth, and how to get past the norm and how to stand out even when the average person is not performing. So if you liked what we talked about today, then definitely like and subscribe and share this video. And until next time, this is Jason Forrest. Push yourself to become a better version of you.